So, hi everybody. I just wanted to take the time to put this little short training video together for EpiProtect. Given the circumstances, we obviously can't meet face to face, but I wanted to make sure you're provided with some support in the meantime. So, don't forget you can request the laminated instructions and the user guide and from us. So you just need to get in touch, and you can do that by calling the office or calling myself or Elaine or indeed Kathy at any time. So you feel free to do that. But I'm just going to go through a few slides now and just go through EpiProtect, what it is, how to use it, so an understanding, and then just show you a short video and a few case study pictures just to give you an idea about what it looks like in situ. So anyway, I'm Rob and we're from Regen Medical, and we're going to focus on obviously EpiProtect and the burns aspect. So I'll get straight into it. Essentially, EpiProtect is a Swedish product, and it was actually developed in a burn center over in Sweden. So the sort of the core principles behind EpiProtect is to make a really simple, easy to use burn cover for partial thickness, superficial, such as scalds, and you can even use it with full thickness burns. The principles are essentially that it's a burn care dressing that can be provided to all, and is cost effective. And through the research at the university attached to the burn center over in Sweden, they discovered eiratex, which is a patented version of cellulose. And it's very interesting what they've been able to do with that because of its conformity and its thinness, which I'll get into. But really, the key reasons for using EpiProtect is essentially down to how it's made up, sort of its composite material, which is cellulose. So it contains no animal material, no human elements to it whatsoever, but it's super conformable and really transparent. So in terms of trying to see what, keep an eye on the wound and sort of understand and sort of manage the wound healing aspect of it, it makes it really easy to do that. And because of the conformity as well, it really helps with reducing pain management. But despite its thinness, it still remains very strong and very breathable. So from that perspective, eiratex is a protective barrier like you would use with allograft, for example. And it's gas permeable, so you can stick water-based antibiotics over the top, but it still acts as a protective barrier. So EpiProtect does behave very differently on partial and superficial burns, as opposed to how it reacts and so how it interacts with full thickness. And I'll come on to that a little bit more. But essentially, eiratex, the composition of the cellulose, is structured in a way that it acts like human skin. So with its thinness and its conformability, it allows it to adhere very, very, very well. And I'm sure from whether you have any experience or spoke to anybody that's currently using any of the burn centres in the UK, you'll generally find that the feedback is extremely positive and it's very easy to use. So conformability and the transparency nature of the product actually means that it's very good for pain reduction. Because of its thinness, and you'll get to see that in the video shortly, it adheres extremely well, so you get really, really good, strong prime contact. Once it's out of the bottle and it's onto the wound, and you place it down and you lay it out and get rid of all the creases and the bubbles, over the course of the next 24 hours, it will adhere and stick to the wound. So it's only one application. Only one application is needed and necessary. But that conformity and that adherence really helps reduce pain management. It has a couple of other benefits as well. One of them actually being it helps reduce exudate. So as I just alluded to, in partial thickness and superficial burns, it's only applied once. So you don't need to reapply it ever again. And as the wound heals, it will just start to come away. So from a monitoring the wound perspective as well, with the transparency, it is really, really useful. And the nature of the way it conforms and sticks, as I said, it's really useful from a pain management perspective, but also as well, it actually in the majority of cases, reduces and stops the exudate as well, which helps with keeping a moist healing environment and helping the wound heal. So in some of the slides I'll show you later on with some of the pictures give a real indication about what it looks like as it stays on in the non-healed areas and it starts to come away in the areas that it's healed. So this is what EpiProtect looks like. It's 357 square centimeters, 21 by 17. And just a few more little things about its key features. So as I mentioned, the adherence is very good in partial and superficial. So if you do have deeper pockets, or for example, the wound is deeper than you initially thought, it won't actually adhere there, but that doesn't mean that you actually have to take it off. In some circumstances, people maybe a quick rush to take it off because it hasn't adhered in certain areas, but you don't actually need to do that unless you need to treat the wound or the burn in another manner. What you may find is you get little pockets of exudate, and if your observations are that it's not infected or there isn't anything wrong with it, leave it and it will start to dry up and it will eventually adhere. But the general rule of thumb is that after a few hours, if you were to place your fingers against it, it's just to give it a bit of a rub, to create some friction, you will see that it's starting to stick. After 24 hours, which is our guideline, it should be fully adhered. Now, in terms of a secondary dressing, you can just put a non-adherent gauze over the top and non-adherent dressing over the top and a bandage. That's totally fine, just to keep it covered up to prevent picking and anybody sort of trying to pull away at it. You can actually leave it without any secondary dressing on it. And we find that in the examples of some of our customers using it on faces, they're not putting a second covering over the top because it just sticks. And actually the patient doesn't really feel like they've got something there. Now that really just boils down to conformance and the patient type that you have. That's entirely up to you, but you don't need to put anything fancy over the top. Just something that's non-adherent and a bandage will suffice. So I mentioned earlier about where you can use it, and how it behaves very differently. So in a partial thickness and a superficial burn, it will just stick on and adhere, and it'll be a one-time application, and it will stay on until it heals, whether that's 7 days, 12 days, or 24 days. But from a full thickness perspective, it will just essentially act as a temporizing barrier. So where you're looking at delayed closure and you want to just protect it because you're putting it in holding, then you can then use EpiProtect. Now, EpiProtect is strong enough to suture and to staple to hold it in place if you want to do that. Despite when you sort of give it a pull, you think, oh, it's very thin, it won't actually do that. But yeah, you can still staple and suture it. From an application perspective, so just while we share this video and show you what EpiProtect looks like, I just want to also share a few hints and tips. The first one being that when you're applying EpiProtect, the use of spot glue is really ideal. So for those difficult anatomical areas and places where you might get a bit of slippage, because it does generally take sort of 12 to 24 hours is what we say for it to adhere and stick and stay in place. So a little bit of spot glue around the edges in those, for example, around the neck where you potentially get slippage is really ideal. So really you're just looking at about a 5 to 10 mil excess overhang around the wound edges, and you don't need to cut it, precisely. And a bit of spot glue, it'll hold it in place until it fully adheres. Now, EpiProtect itself, as you can see, it's in a slightly unusual bottle. It comes with the instructions inside, and this video now is just going to demonstrate them using some tweezers just to open it up. I would recommend that you do that every time rather than using your hands. It's a bit fiddly. So a pair of tweezers, it just pops it straight open. Now, EpiProtect is just satin saline, and the trick, hints and tips, a trick with EpiProtect is not to wring it out, it's to apply it on wet as it is. So I'm just going to pop it into the bowl now, and it's going to pick it up. And there is no right or wrong way to apply EpiProtect. So you can sort of stick it on any side as you apply it, and just taking it out now. And when you're placing it on to the burn, to the limb, the anatomical area, it's kind of a bit like wallpaper. You just really want to just lay it on nice and flat, get it fully conform. It's really thin, as you can see. You can see the transparency. It's a bit like wallpapering. All the bubbles, get it nice and flat, get all the creases and lines out. And when you do that, it will absolutely fully adhere and stay on. And as I said, you don't really need to do anything more than a 5 to 10 mil excess around the wound edges, and it doesn't have to be cut precise. And you can use multiple pieces on one wound if that makes it a bit easier for you. And it is also really important to make sure that, you know, if you do have a bit of excess fluid building up underneath the dressing, underneath EpiProtect, is not to cut holes in it with a temptation to allow it to drain through. So if it's infected, you need to dress that and cut a hole and deal with that. But if it's not, just leave it and it will eventually dry out. So cutting holes in EpiProtect defeats the object of what it's trying to do. So you just have to leave it as a complete dressing, but make sure that it's down nice and flat, and it will adhere nicely if it is so. So just to give you a few examples of what EpiProtect looks like, this is an instance where it's been used in a full thickness size burn, where it's been used as a protective covering, and you can see EpiProtect being placed on, obviously, around here. And then also as well, this is an example where it's just being used as a protective barrier, and you can see that's pretty much what EpiProtect looks like there. And this is where it's been sutured into place and covered over. So there's just some examples of where it can be used outside of the partial and superficial burn area. This is an instance where it's being used for microsurgery to cover over the surrounding of the eye and the top of the head. But what we're interested in here really is just to give you an idea about timelines and what it looks like on skulls and superficial burns. So you can see here where it's just literally been placed on, and then you have, even at day 4, you can see that it's starting to peel away, and then day 11, you can see it's just pretty much gone, and then day 14, you can see the end results there. So it could start to come off very, very quickly, or it could stay on. So it just depends on, obviously, the wound itself. Here's another example where across the course of the 21 days, you can see the start result to the finished result using EpiProtect. And then again, this is a good example on day 3 here on the picture there, where you can see already it's starting to come away. Now, where it's starting to come away, the easiest thing to do is just to damp cloth or damp gauze, whatever it is that you would use, just to pull it away and pull it off. Obviously, don't pull away what's already adhered, because that's still healing. But you can just give it a soak, rub off the edges, and then the rest will stay on, and it'll just start to come away as it heals. From a showering perspective, you can get some water on it, but obviously you don't want to get it completely and utterly soaked through and wet, as it will come off. With regards to water and cleansing, EpiProtect is designed to stick on and stay on, but not stay on so well that it becomes incredibly difficult to get it off. So unlike some other burn care dressings, this is designed to be able to get it off with relative ease and not cause discomfort for the patient if you want to get it off early. So it was trying to strike the happy balance between being so firm that you can't get it off, and you have to be quite aggressive to just being able to give it a soak. Here's another example, day 1 on a skull burn, and then if we can come straight through, you can see there on day 14 the results of using EpiProtect, and you can see that it's performed very nicely. From a what not to do perspective, we talked about overlay and about coverage. So this really, in my mind, it's just been laid on. It needed to be cut and trimmed to the right size. There's just too much overhang going on there. So we really want to try and get that overhang down to, sort of like 5 mil all the way around. That way you don't get it pulling off and pulling away, and certainly we get the patients sort of picking away at it. This is another example here where you can see EpiProtect being used versus standard treatment. If I just flick through there, you can see the difference over day 34 with using EpiProtect. And then a final one, I think if I just skip through, you can see here another example of where EpiProtect is on and it's just starting to come away a little bit at the edges where it's already starting to heal. And just to summarize, I think obviously if you have any questions, the numbers back at the beginning of the video, feel free to get in touch. As I said, we have the user instructions, the laminated guides for you to be able to access. We can post those out to you or send on the PDF format. But yeah, just to summarize, essentially, it's from a partial and superficial perspective, it's a one application, so you only need to apply it once, and it conforms extremely well. You can monitor the wound. It's transparent, which is obviously the reason why you're able to monitor the wound. It's excellent for pain reduction. It's really easy to apply. It has a nice soothing effect when you take it out and lay it on. There's nothing complicated about it. You need to make sure that it's laid on very flat. All the creases are laid out and it's well anchored down in the first instance while it takes time to set over the first 24 hours. From a review perspective, after 24 hours, it's good to take off the second dressing and have a look at it. And that really covers everything, really. So from a basic overview, any more questions, please feel free to get in touch. Many thanks.